everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for a genre wrap-up for mystery, thriller, gothic, horror. So as you guys know, if you've been around for a little while on my channel, at about July, I think, this year, I started doing genre wrap-ups. So instead of doing a month-long wrap-up, I am doing wrap-ups that incorporate 3 months at a time worth of a particular genre. So this particular genre wrap-up is, like I said, mystery, thriller, horror, gothic, dark academia, all that sort of thing, whatever of those types of genres that I have read. I actually am probably going to go back to doing monthly wrap-ups in the new year, just to let you know that that is upcoming, but I'm going to finish out the year I've got this wrap-up, and then it'll go around to the fantasy section, and as you also may know, that is probably my most read genre. I mean, it's definitely my most read genre: fantasy, science fiction, fabulism, magical realism. So I should be able to wrap up the remaining books, but if there's any left over, then I'll probably do like a final books I didn't talk about. I don't know exactly how I'll word it, but you get the idea. Anyway, so yeah, this is it's mostly thriller and mystery. I have 5 books to talk to you about today, so we shouldn't be here for as long as we usually are. I will try to keep myself somewhat succinct. We'll see how we go. So the first book that I want to talk to you about, I'm actually going to do this, and I'm just going to introduce them too, and then talk to you about individual. Did that even make sense? I'm going to introduce you. My phone is ringing, but I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to show you what the 2 books are, because they are book 2 and 3 of a trilogy, and then I'll explain my thoughts, etc. about them one after the other. So we have I went and got the wrong books. This one's correct. We will have this as a placeholder. So I'm going to overlay the image. Oh my god, this is going so well. So I read Every Word by Ellie Marney, which is book 2 in the Every series, and then I read Every Move, which is the overlaid copy, the Every series, which is the 3rd and final book in the series. So the series is a loose Sherlock Holmes retelling. So instead of having Sherlock Holmes, we have James Mycroft, and instead of having John Watson, we have Rachel Watts. Mycroft and Watts are both teenagers, and we're in Rachel's head. We see Rachel's point of view, and we follow. The first book starts out a few months after Rachel has moved from country Victoria to Melbourne in Australia. When they move to Melbourne, just a few houses down from where Rachel now lives is James Mycroft lives, and he lives with his aunt. He's a very tortured young man. They are teenagers. They're about 16 or 17 when the first book starts. James Mycroft is very much an aspiring detective, much in the kind of Sherlock Holmes line of thinking. He's very bright. They're both very bright, and they get embroiled in some situations. We follow them in these 2 books. First of all, in Every Word, Mycroft's parents were killed, and something happens in this book that is very reminiscent of what occurred during their deaths, and it's in London, so Mycroft goes off to London. Rachel, knowing how big of an impact that will have on him, follows. And it's about the mystery surrounding what's happened now and surrounding his parents, and yeah, they get embroiled in the mystery and all sorts of stuff happens, and it's lots of fun. It's very, very quick paced, so it's young adult, and the pacing I think really suits the young adult sort of, it's quite quick. We get into the story quite quickly. There's a lot happening on every page, but it doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel like you miss out on important information or important story telling or character development or anything like that. I think it's incredibly well done. I think that Ellie Marney is fantastic at writing characters, at writing a really great mystery. I know that she's done a lot of research. We actually spoke to Ellie from Ellie Grey Books, and I spoke to Ellie Marney in our live show for this particular book, and she was talking about some of the research that she did, so we know that she's done quite a bit of research. She sort of trailed forensics people, not trailed, but like shadowed them and that sort of thing, so she's definitely done her research, and you can really tell in this book, you can tell that it's well researched and well thought out and well structured and just really enjoyable, just really well written. Like I said, the characters are really well done. It all works together. It all kind of, the storyline works together, the characters all really work together, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend, if you like mysteries, kind of like the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, that kind of young adult mystery, I think that you'd really, really enjoy this series. And yeah, definitely think you'd really enjoy this one. I gave this one, let me just check. I gave this one 9 on Core Pile, which equates to 5 stars. On this one, I don't know why, so we have to have the overlay. I don't really know why. I actually only gave this one 8.14 with 4 stars. I'm not really sure why, because I really, really enjoyed this one as well. So we're back in Australia for this one, and all of the stuff to do with what happened with Mycroft's parents, and then what happened with the case that they then were solving in London is coming up and coming kind of home to roost. And so they are, I'm going to put this down because the overlay is what I'm talking about. Yeah, so they're trying to have to deal with what's going on and what the results of all that. But yeah, like I said, I think that it was really, really well done, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm not sure why I gave it 4 stars. I did give that on Goodreads, so who knows? But like I said, I really love the characters, I really love her storytelling, I love the way she structures the stories and the way that she paces them, and I think that it's a fantastic series. I thought it was a great conclusion. I'm talking about it now and feeling like it's got to be at least a 4.5, so I'm going to up it, although on Goodreads I can't because they don't do halves, but 4.5 stars. Just fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it, and I had a lot of fun reading this series, so I highly recommend. My camera is flashing, my battery, so I will be back in a sec. Alright, so that was the Every series by Ellie Marney. Like I said, highly recommend. Fantastic series. The next book that I want to talk to you about is Little Creeping Things by Chelsea Ichaso. I buddy read this with Chloe from Chloe's Reading... What is wrong with me? Chloe Reads Books? I do not know what is going on with me today. But anyway, I read this with Chloe Reads Books and Connor from Connor's Library Corner. I'm actually not 100% sure how Connor felt about this book, but I know that Chloe and I had a very similar experience with this book, and that is that neither of us particularly enjoyed it. I gave it 2 stars. I think that Chloe gave it 2 stars as well. So on Core Pile that was 4.57, which is 2 stars. So in this story we follow Cassidy, and Cassidy is a teenager. I think she's supposed to be around 16, and when she was a young girl, she was involved in a fire, and in that fire her friend died and she didn't. She thinks, and it's been ruled as that she accidentally started the fire, but a lot of the people in the town, particularly people her age, think that she did it on purpose, or like to, give her grief about the fact that she did it on purpose. And one of the main people that do that is a person called Melody, who is, I think, a couple of years older than Cassidy. And then one day Melody goes missing, and then Cassidy is a person of interest. She was around when Melody went missing, and she doesn't really have an alibi, and so she's a person of interest in that situation, and she starts to wonder, did she actually accidentally set this fire, or was she actually a murderer? Did she do something to Melody and just can't remember it? So the premise I thought sounded really, really interesting. I know that Chloe was really intrigued by the premise as well. It could have been really, really good, but unfortunately it just was really disappointing. So the main thing for me most of the way through the book was just how much I didn't like the character, which I know that not liking a character doesn't necessarily have to be not liking the book, but I also didn't really think much of the book. I didn't think that much of the pacing. I really didn't think anything much of the decisions that people were making, and not just the main character, but the police seemed to be making really random decisions that just didn't really make sense for, you know, what police would do. Not that I'm a cop or know anything about how being a detective works, but it just felt like, but why would they do that? Why would they make that assumption? Why, you know, it just didn't seem to make sense. And Cassidy's actions were really, I mean, she behaved, we're inside her head. So we get a lot of her perspective. I mean, we get all from her perspective. So we get a lot of her sort of feelings and her way of thinking about things and the reason why she's doing stuff. And instead of any of that making me feel like, okay, I get where you're coming from, it was like, okay, you're making really poor and stupid decisions and I don't understand. Like, and your reasoning, I guess I get your reasoning, but it's not great reasoning. Like, your reason is stupid as well. Now, I do realize that teenagers, if you're a teenager and you happen to be watching this, please, I do not mean this to be offensive, but there's a lot going on when you're a teenager. You're experiencing a lot of new stuff. You are trying to figure out who you are and what you want to do and what the world means and how you fit in. You're stuck between being an adult and being a child. You've got all these hormones. There's a lot going on. So it's hard for a lot of teenagers to sort of think outside of themselves or their own circle of experience, put themselves in other people's shoes. I know that, you know, some teenagers are incredibly empathetic. I'm not suggesting that that's not the case, that empathy isn't something that teenagers experience. I'm just, this person was so selfish and so self-absorbed, and all of her motivation came entirely from herself and her own wanting to look after herself. And I know self-preservation, etc. And like I said, I know that some teenagers can be quite self-centered or self-absorbed, but this was just over the top. This just felt unrealistic, and honestly, it really wasn't great. It's not just I didn't like the character, so therefore I didn't like the book. I didn't like the way the character was written. I didn't like the character, but I also didn't like the way the character was written. It just didn't feel real. It felt like a caricature. Yeah, really wouldn't recommend this book. Now I, as you probably know from having watched these genre wrap-ups, thrillers and mysteries are not my most read. They're probably my least read. So I do enjoy a good thriller and mystery, but I'm not great at seeing the signs. So who the perpetrator was in the end, what had really happened, I didn't guess at all. I know that Chloe guessed it. I don't know about when exactly, but Chloe guessed it certainly a lot quicker than I did. And she was kind of annoyed because she felt like it was telegraphed. And because of the conversations we were having about it, I could see what she meant, and I could see that, yeah, that actually was quite telegraphed. So kind of hindsight made me realise that. But at the time, I didn't pick that up, which I guess you could argue made my experience a little bit better, but then talking to someone else and looking back on it and thinking about it some more made me realise that it was telegraphed. So that kind of made my enjoyment a little bit less. But the main thing, honestly, I wasn't loving this all the way through, but the main thing that really dragged it down and put it at a 2 rather than potentially a 3 is the ending. It just, not only was it telegraphed, although like I said I didn't pick that up, but it felt really sloppy. It felt like it was almost an afterthought. It wasn't explored, I didn't think, at all. Almost. It was just kind of like, okay, this is what happened, and we didn't explore the motivations behind why that happened or the reason for that to happen. It was very much like, this has happened and this is why, and we were kind of like, yeah, but that doesn't explain why, that just tells me what it was. It just didn't feel like the author had really thought that through very well, and it felt like an afterthought, honestly. It felt like she was writing the story and kind of realised that she didn't have an ending and kind of just was like, this happened, and didn't really map it out or put any thought into it at all. And I mean, this coming from a pantser, I am not a story mapper. I sit down and just write stuff, but at a certain point you go back and you rewrite and you edit and you think about things more, and it just didn't feel like any of that happened. So yeah, really disappointing. It's going straight on the unhaul pile. Hopefully someone else will pick it up and enjoy it, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, guys, honestly. Yeah, disappointing. Next up, we have Bird Box, and this is the one that I buddy read with my mum, and we watched we read the book and then watched the Netflix movie with Sandra Bullock, and I really enjoyed myself. I gave it a 6.71, which equates to 3 stars. So it was very much middle of the road for me, but I really enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed chatting with my mum about it. I enjoyed watching the movie with her. In the vlog that would have gone up a couple of days ago, sometime just recently, I will link it in the description below, and in the I talked a little bit about going around there and watching the movie and all of that. Yeah, so we had a great deal of fun doing that and chatting about it. Like I said, middle of the road. There wasn't anything particularly outstanding or amazing about the book, but there was nothing that really dragged it down or made it bad. It just was like, this is fun. I'm having a good time. It's not super memorable. I may never read it again, but I'm happy that I read it. So for those of you that don't know, this follows Mallory, and we kind of have 2 different timelines going on. So we start out the book in, I don't know what year, but we start out the book and a apocalyptic event has happened, and there are some kind of creature, alien type thing that live now in the world. It's in our world, and whenever anyone looks at them, something happens in their brain chemistry and they become extremely violent and end up killing themselves. So you can't look, basically. You wear blindfolds, cover your eyes whenever you go outside. So we start out with Mallory, and she has 2 children. They're about 4 or 5 years old. They are about to embark on this journey, which is going to be extremely dangerous. They're going to have to travel down the river. They won't be able to see anything. They have to have their blindfolds on, and yeah, it'll be really dangerous. We then switch back to the other timeline, and that is when the actual thing started. So when the creatures started appearing, and we follow Mallory and her experiences of when this was all starting to take place and what she did and how she survived. She was just found out that she was pregnant at the very beginning of the book, so we're following that experience as well. And yeah, there's a lot more in the story, but I don't want to give any spoilers, although if you've watched the movie, which, you know, I assume quite a lot of people have done, you probably know a little bit about what's going on if you haven't read the book, but there are some differences, so I don't want to go into more detail, spoilers and all that. But yeah, like I said, it was fun. Definitely wouldn't, yeah, I rate it. I think that it's good. I think that it's fun. I think that if you like that kind of thriller, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's horror. I mean, it's in the more leaning towards horror than it is just plain thriller. I guess it's sinister more than horrifying, because you don't ever get a description of what these creatures are, and you don't see them ever in the movie either. And so it's kind of that sinister aspect of like not knowing what's going on, and so constantly being afraid of what you don't understand and what you don't get to see, which I thought was done really, really well. That was probably my favourite part of the book. And even though I'd already watched the movie, sometimes when you watch a movie, particularly if it's a thriller or a mystery or something, if you watch the movie first, when you go to read the book, you don't necessarily feel that same level of suspense or, you know, unease or whatever, because you already know roughly what's going to happen. But I still felt that sinister fear that Mallory felt, particularly when she was going on the journey on the river. So that I thought was really well done. So yeah, I quite enjoyed it. And the final book that I want to talk to you about today is The Bluffs by Kyle Perry. This is a book that is actually set in Tasmania, which is where I live, my home state of Australia. And yeah, it's a thriller. It takes place in a town that is in the kind of wilderness area of Tasmania. It's up in the middle of the state, and they have these looming bluffs that overlook the town, and this sort of very it's the wilderness area is a very unknown territory. It hasn't been particularly explored. You have to have a lot of knowledge of sort of the weather, and you have to be very, you know, you make sure you tell people where you're going and take a sat nav phone and all that sort of stuff if you go out there, because people do get lost and can hurt themselves. And yeah, so it's a thriller. So it's quite convoluted, to be honest with you. Even though I really, really enjoyed it, I definitely found myself kind of scratching my head at certain times and being like, what? There's a lot of twists and turns, and I did not see the ending coming at all. I kind of felt a little bit suspicious of I mean, I basically felt suspicious of everybody. They kept having stuff that would reveal certain aspects of the story and certain aspects of who might have done what. And then you'd be like, oh, so it's that, and then there'd be something else, and you'd be, oh, hang on, maybe it was this instead. Yeah, so there's it's very convoluted. There's quite a lot of different kind of tropes, like the kind of twin swap trope, the unreliable narrator trope, the are they really missing, have they been hurt, or did they decide to be missing trope. But I thought it was really, really well done, and I really, really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it if you enjoy thrillers, particularly thrillers that can be definitely keep you guessing and guessing and guessing, and also just because it's a Tasmanian book, and I think that's amazing. I love the fact that there is a really, really well written book written by a Tasmanian about Tasmania, set in Tasmania. I mean, I did read another one of those earlier this year, so it's not to say they don't exist, but it's just nice when you come across that, because, you know, it's nice to read about something that you love and a place that you really know really well. On Callpile, I gave the 7.47, which equates to 4 stars. So that's it. That is the end of my mystery, thriller, etc. wrap up. As you can see, mostly mystery thrillers, although we did have the one that was kind of bordering on horror. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of my descriptions of any of these books. Have you read any of the books? What did you think of them? Are there any that you would like to read? Also, if you have read Bird Box, let me know in the comments below whether you liked the book better or the movie better, and also whether you think it's thriller or horror, what genre you think it fits into. That'd be fantastic. If you would like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me, I'm not sure if there even is a mountain emoji, but leave me something that would give you a vibe for this kind of mountainous, misty, mysterious, rainy kind of cover. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.